Let us continue studying relations, functions, and graphs. We'll specifically be looking at the inverse function. Now, an inverse function, you can think of it as reverse function. All right? If you have a function and you have an input to the function, you get an output. The inverse of that function now will take the output of the original function and get out the original input to the first function. Let me show you what I mean. Suppose this is my inverse function. Let me draw it. Okay. Let me draw it. My inverse function. My inverse function looks like a truck. Alright. I have my truck here and the wheels of the truck, and this is the engine. Alright. You have the window, you can see the driver. Okay. The inverse function takes in the input. Let's say the input is A. So it's like you have gas going into the truck. And then the output through the exhaust, you have B, smoke coming through the exhaust, or something like that. Now, if you, ideally, I would want to imagine that you could take that exhaust, put it in the back of the truck, and get back gas out of the front, out of the engine. But you know, in real life, that wouldn't work. That's just something that I wish could happen. But anyway, I wish that I could take all the exhaust, put back in my vehicle, and get gasoline when I'm finished, so I wouldn't have to buy gas anymore. But let's say you want the truck turn this way. Alright, I have my front wheel, my back wheel, and the driver door, and the window, driver window. I turn my truck around. And then I take the output B, put in the back of the truck, in the exhaust, and out comes my gasoline, A. If you could do that, you wouldn't have to buy gas anymore. Just turn the exhaust back into gasoline. But anyway, what you have here is a function, and it's inverse. Now, the inverse function here, what it does is take an input and get an output. The original function takes the input and you get an output. If you take a number, put into the function, and you get an answer, B. If you take the answer B, put into the inverse function, you get the original number A. Alright? Now, it's somewhat like the hybrid car. With a hybrid car, you have an electric motor that can also act as a generator, and you use regenerative braking to recapture some of the energy that you had put out when you press the brake. With the hybrid car, there's a certain feature that helps you to save on gas. And the fully electric car as well, it's regenerative braking, where, and electric trains offer this as well. You have the energy being put into the motor to drive the car. It may be from having charged it at your home, or from the small engine that's used to drive the generator, to charge the battery. Now the battery runs the motor. It puts in electrical energy into the motor, and you get out mechanical energy from movement of the hybrid car. When you press the brakes, part of the braking power comes from the motor acting as a generator, and that generator sends back some of the energy to recharge the battery. So the same motor acts as a generator. In one case, it takes in electrical energy from the battery and puts out mechanical energy from driving the car. That is a function. Now when you press the brakes, the mechanical energy from the brakes goes back to the motor. It acts as a generator and sends electrical energy back into the batteries. That's the inverse. So that's the inverse function there. Another example I can think of function and its inverse is when you put your password into your social media, or let's say you're logging into your bank account online and you put in your password. You have an encryption of that password. When you put in your password and your laptop or your phone or tablet, it sends out electromagnetic waves to the Wi-Fi device. Some scammer might be trying to get your password using their own device. But when those waves go into the air and they're accessible by persons, what happens is that it is encrypted by a certain function. And what this scammer sees is some things that look like complete nonsense. It cannot figure out what it means. But then, when all of that looks like nonsense goes to the other computer that will go into your bank account, it decrypts all of that, and then your password is entered into their computer and you're able to access your bank account. So you have an encryption, that's a function, causes your password to be encrypted, and then a decryption, it takes what was encrypted back to what you originally did to get your password. Encryption and decryption is also an example of coding, turning something easily understood into a code that somebody else cannot understand. That's encoding, and then decoding. That thing that looks like nonsense that someone cannot understand, it decodes it. Alright. So you have the function and its inverse. Let's look at an example of a function and its inverse. Let's say you have a function. Generally, you can use y equal, but since we're dealing with functions and relation, and generally you have an equation in the form y equal, let's use the form f of x equal. F of x equals x plus 1. This is a function. Let's put, let's say, 3 into the function. Right? Our input is 3. Now, what we're finding is f of 3. And we say f of 3 is 3 plus 1 equals 4. So, you put in 3 and the output is 4. Now, what I want to do is find the inverse of this function. Our function is f of x equals x plus 1. How do you find the inverse of a function? You write in the form, write as y equal instead of f of x equal. So you write y equals x plus 1. The next step, you interchange x and y. You change x to y and y to x. So you say x is equal to y plus 1. Then the next thing, you transpose for y. You make y the subject. In this case, you have x equals y plus 1. What you can do is subtract 1 from both sides. So on the left you have x minus 1 equals, you're going to have y plus 1 minus 1. But the 1 minus 1 is 0. So you don't have to worry about the 1 anymore. Let's turn this around and make the y on the left. Y equals x minus 1. Then the next thing is to change the y to f inverse of x. So you change y to f inverse of x. So what you will have is f inverse of x is equal to x minus 1. So this is the inverse function. Now, you should carefully note the steps you take in inverting a function. I'm going to erase it to make space and write my inverse function up here. So here goes, erasing. Okay, so up top here, let me write my function, all of this, f of x equals x plus 1. That was my function. And the inverse function, f inverse of x equals x minus 1. X minus 1. I have up here my function and my inverse function. Alright? Remember, this is my function and this is my inverse function. I don't really want to take out my truck here. At first, I had put in 3 and got out 4 from the function. So I had 3 going into my function and out came 4. Let me put this down here. I have to be fighting for space here. Up here, I had 3 in and got 4 out. Okay, good. Now, what if I put 4 in to my inverse? What would I get out? For my inverse, I put 4 in. What will I get out? If I put 4 into this, I would have 4 minus 1. 4 minus 1 equals 3. I got out 3. Okay, good. So I put a number into my function and got out an answer. I put that answer into my inverse and got out the original number. Just like here, I put in A into the truck and got out B. When I turn the truck around, I have the inverse truck down here. It's facing the opposite direction. So I put in B and got out A. Good. So I have my function and its inverse. So that is just a little introduction to the inverse function. We'll do several examples later on in a different video.